All right, we are live.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It is 7:01 PM on Tuesday, June 25th, 2024. And I now call to order the 2140th regular meeting of the City of College Place City Council. Sherry, will you please take roll call?
Mayor Hernandez,
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland,
Present.
Councilmember Espinoza,
Present.
Councilmember Peterson,
Present.
Councilmember Williams,
Present.
Councilmember Sherman,
Present.
and Councilmember Boyle.
Present.
And Councilmember Jessup has asked to be excused. We do have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. Will you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, thank you. It's time for public comment. Sherry, did anyone submit a comment in advance or request to speak via telephone or virtually?
I did not receive any requests to speak.
Okay.
Or public comments.
Okay, if there's anyone in person that would like to speak during public comment, please raise your hand now. All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda for tonight consists of the agenda for tonight, June 25th, 2024, the council minutes from June 11th, 2024, the March financials, and the existing and excusing the absence of Councilmember Jessup. Are there any items any member of the council would like removed from the consent agenda at this time?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Moving along, we get two presentations on the agenda tonight. So we have the honor of recognizing two of our most favorite employees, favorites, not excluding right? All the rest of the employees. For their years of service. So we have two of them tonight. I'm going to go by order of service. So we'd like to first recognize and show our appreciation to John Booth. And I'm going to read the certificate. In congratulating and reaching the significant milestone in your career, your efforts and dedication plays a tremendous part in our success, and we appreciate your commitment. Thank you for your 25 years of dedicated service to the City of College Place. Come on up. Get a fancy smanchy.
Thank you.
And I think she'll.
Oh, Sean's been.
I mean, congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations.
You know what? We might take that back. Oops.
What are these? Are these chocolates?
No, I think they're pins. All right, so next, our certificate of appreciation is presented to Randy Chamberlain. And congratulations in reaching this significant milestone in your career. Your efforts and dedication plays a tremendous part in our success, and we do appreciate your commitment. Thank you for your 45 years of dedication to the service. Come on up. 45.
It's 49. But I was stupid enough not to get over it.
How did that work?
I was in high school.
Oh, those kids, I tell you. Truly, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really? So you don't get credit for all that, huh? And then you get your.
We know.
We know.
Congratulations.
Yay.
Okay. We've got to have some pictures around here somewhere, right?
So what year did you start? It would have been,
Summer of 8th grade year.
oh.
I was gonna say, was it legal?
Cedar program.
Okay, okay.
It was an alternative to picking onions.
Gosh, yeah.
If you were growing up around Lowell,
Yeah,
onions or strawberries or something,
Yeah.
but garbage truck was a lot more.
really?
It
really was.
Wow, no, I think that's amazing. What an opportunity though, right?
Had a garbage truck pull up in front of lava all the time and office staff would say, hey, your limousine's here.
It's my rides here.
So,
I love that story.
Good job.
Thank you both gentlemen, and to their patient wives for sharing them with us, because I know we take a lot of their time, truly. So thank you, because it's a sacrifice for you as well. We know it. Thank you.
Tell me before.
Okay, next, Mr. Carlton's going to present the tax increment finance, also known as TIF project update.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to bring in front of council where we're at on our TIF. As you all recall, it's the tax increment financing area that you approved the ordinance back on May 23rd of last year, identifying Stone Creek downtown College Place tax increment area. Now, under that, we're moving forward in potentially bringing a bond ordinance to council in a month or two. So we just wanted to give you an update of where we're at on the costs, and I did provide a cash flow of where we're anticipating the money with the total dollars to be spent. If we can bring that up, we'll kind of talk through the history, and if we can read this, a lot of information here. So basically it's broken. There's about 6 projects there. There's 5. A couple of them are combined. The Majania Road project are the first 2. That's in there for right now. We're looking at an estimated cost of $7.921 million, of which 4.3 would be financed by TIF. You can see the other various funding components in there. We have a federal appropriation of $2.5 million. We have a TIB grant for $1.9 million, federal MPO grant for just under $1 million, and the remainder of the funds from the stormwater utility. And you can see that we're very well funded for that project. We're showing, that totals up to $9.8 million, of which right now we're at just under $8 million in total funding. Also included in that Majania Road is the Reservoir 4 main line that's going to go down the road on Majania. That's estimated at $1.7 million, and you can see the different funding component breakdown with $424,750 from TIF, some from the water utility, and a state earmark. And you can see how the cash flows we've projected out. The Reservoir 4 and the Majania Road. No, I'm just getting these mixed up. Of the East-West Road and the downtown parking lots and the Stone Creek intersection, I believe, are being handled by JUB. And the Majania Road is being handled by PBS. I did get some forecasting from JUB, and you can see how, with the expectation those projects will be wrapping up, into third quarter of 2026. I didn't hear back from PBS when I requested their cash flow, so I used what we historically had in the budget. Along the second project is the downtown parking lot. That's estimated at $1.4 million. That will all come from TIF. The third group is the Stone Creek East-West Road and the College Avenue intersection estimated at $8.3 million with 2.5 coming from TIF. That's actually a little deceiving because that total cost, that remaining balance between the 8.3 and the 2.5 will come from the lakeside development. So currently we're working with Northwest Municipal Advisors and Foster Garvey Bond Council to prepare the issuance of the bond in late September, early October. Also, as part of the funding that we're putting together, we're also going to look at potentially refunding the 2014 UTGO GO bond that was for the CARS project. There's some favorable interest rates, and there's a potential of us saving between $100,000 and $200,000 over the remaining term of the loan. So it would make sense to look at refunding that at the time. So there's a potential that we could have a second bond ordinance doing the replacement, the refunding of that bond. So we won't know that until we're real close to see which way interest rates go down. If interest rates go down, then it'll make this more attractive. The bond back in 2013, it had a staggered interest rate, and in 2025, the first 7 years were at 2%, the next 4 were at 3%. That took us through this year. And in 2025, it goes up to 4%, and in the final 2 years at 4.125. So we'll see if we can get an attractive rate, and we'll only bring it to council if we feel it's there's some savings. No sense refunding if there's no savings. So that's where we stand on the projects. Any questions?
All right, Councilmember Cleveland, question or comments? Councilmember Espinosa? Councilmember Peterson?
What's the life of these bonds? Are they probably spread out amongst different lifespans?
Sorry?
The lifespan of these bonds?
20 years is the max we can go under TIF.
That's okay. That's what we're thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Williams?
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Sherman?
No, thank you for explaining this.
And Councilmember Boyle?
No questions. Thanks, Ryan.
All right, now were there questions or comments? All right, thank you, Brian. We're good. Let's see, there's no public hearing, so let's move on to the action items. There's 5 of them tonight. The first is of Rose Street ornamental pedestrian lights, and Mr. McAndrews is going to present on that.
Thank you, Mayor. We've talked about parts of this project several times. This is for the Damson Street and then Rose Street realignment, and then more recently TIB, State Transportation Improvement Board, funded the addition of pedestrian lights. And I think they gave us $487,160 for pedestrian lights along Rose Street. So that would be along the multi-use path on the south side of Rose Street from College Avenue up to either Lambert or Cary Court, where we will hopefully have that figured out by the end of this week. And that's dependent on right of way and conduit that's in the ground. It's looking like we might not have the right of way to put the lights in. So that could change this number slightly, but because of long lead times for the lights, similar to what we did with the CARS project, or not the CARS project, 4Bikes project, I apologize. We'd like to go ahead and procure the lights in advance, get them ordered while we're negotiating with the contractor to get the work done. And so if we do lights all the way to Cary Court, it will be 42 lights. And because these things get hit and we like to have a few spares on the shelf, we are planning to purchase an additional 4. If we don't do the last section from Lambert to Cary Court, I think the number's 32 off the top of my head. I don't remember, but and so I guess what we're looking for here is we're recommending the purchase of these lights in advance And like I said, we'll have the numbers kind of hashed out by the end of the week, most likely. We're not gonna order all 46 if we don't need them. And so we'll order the number that we need. So it would be up to 141,138.40 or 34 cents. Any questions?
Councilmember Cleveland?
I was a little curious. You said that we weren't sure we had the right of way for kind of the last segment. Could you give us a little bit more detail about that?
Sure. The section between College Avenue and Lambert, we have the wide multi-use path and a landscaping strip between the pathway and the road. And so the lights will be placed in that landscaping strip. Once you get past Lambert, heading east, so from Lambert to Cary Court, it's a curb tight sidewalk. It's much more narrow. I think it's only 5 or 6 feet. And from the survey, it's looking like the right of way is too close to the back of the sidewalk, so there won't be room to add lights behind the sidewalk. And so we're still trying to finalize all of that. But this TIB money has to be spent by the end of the year. So to go and try to do a right of way acquisition process is likely not going to be feasible before the end of the year. So
would that be something that we'd try to get on the agenda later on, or to just be like, that's the way it is? Or
we are trying to determine that at this point. One option that we might do is go ahead and install some additional conduit. There's conduit there that our consultant engineers and my capital projects manager are trying to determine what's city owned and what's owned by a utility. And so one option that we've talked about would be potentially installing conduit now so that it's in the ground for future. Another option that we're exploring is there's existing utility poles in that section. And so in lieu of the ornamental pedestrian lights, we may work with the power company to add your standard, what we call Cobra headlights on those poles. So the roadway and sidewalk would still be illuminated. It would just be different lighting than what the ornamental ones. So.
okay, thank you.
Councilmember Espinosa?
On the quote, there's 2 line items, both quantity of 46. Can you explain what those are?
Yes. So one of them is for the LED fixture, the head essentially that goes on top of those poles. And one of them is for the pole assembly itself. And so they're similar costs. Trying to.
Yeah, see 1,400 and 1,300.
Yeah. And so-
Also, the follow-up question is, do you know the lifespan of those LED lights? What can we expect there for durability?
I do not know what the manufacturer says. I can tell you they're the same lights or different, slightly revised, newer version of the same lights we have on College Avenue and we have on 4th Street, and that we're planning to put in Lions Park and other places in town. And the lights themselves have lasted and worked very well. What ends up happening is, a vehicle runs into them or somehow they get damaged, and that's when we end up replacing them. So we end up buying a couple of them a year just to be replaced, damaged ones that were typically involved in like a motorist accident. But to my knowledge, we haven't had any failures from the LED fixture itself.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Peterson?
It's $3,000 a pole.
Yeah,
I
roughly.
mean,
Yeah, when they get hit and we do an insurance claim after we buy all the parts and
we're talking about the metal poles.
yeah,
These aren't plastic.
they're metal
And the light. And the light.
and the light.
I found that incredibly inexpensive. What are they? They're made out of they're substantial, aren't they?
They're fairly substantial. These are the smaller ones. They're 12 or 14 feet, not the big, tall.
Right. Not the intersection.
Yeah, the ornamental ones like we have along College Avenue.
Right.
All things considered, they are relatively affordable.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that. I guess the other question, and I think I asked this 40 years ago. No, it wasn't that quite. Will they have outlets on them for Christmas lights? think we
I
had
believe they will. There's two. The pole and the fixture itself can accommodate an outlet. I'm not sure if we have entirely determined if they will be included as part of that project yet. So we're a little ahead of things trying to get these ordered before we finalize our design. Because we want to make sure they're ordered and they arrive and are ready to go. So it doesn't delay the project.
I know when they did the Main Street, we brought that up, I think, in a conversation, and they were able to, when they built them, made them, forged them, whatever.
Sure.
They added that. It was kind of an important thing because afterwards it just,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't think we used
They,
it. for a
they
while.
have a place for an outlet, the ones that we bought recently do.
Oh,
So,
Yeah, oh,
so you either put a blank on it or you add
Right.
the wiring.
uh,
I think you have to pull a second conduit and a second set of wires for that. And so that could be
but at
the
least,
cost decision is pulling that much conduit. If it's not already in place, could be expensive.
at least it's forged for the possibility.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councilmember Williams,
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Sherman,
I don't have any questions either. Thanks, Robin.
Councilmember Boyle.
No questions, thanks.
All right, so if there's no further questions or comments, do we have a motion for Mr. McAndrews? Councilmember Cleveland, please do.
I motion to allow the Public Works Director or designee to place an order for up to 46 pedestrian lights in the amount of $141,138.34 for the Rose Street lighting project from Northeast Ash Street to Northeast Cary Court.
Is there a second? Second from. Any other questions or comment? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Thank you, Mr. McAndrews. Okay, next is accepting the grant award from U.S. Forest Service Tree Grant via River Network. And Mr. Zattel is going to present on that.
Hey, thank you. This has definitely been a process. So the grant was originally going to go through U.S. Forest Service, and then in the wisdom of federal government, awarded the contract to a nonprofit on the East Coast called River Network, and then we had to renegotiate the whole grant agreement. So all of that is done now. So we did rework a couple of things. Originally, we were having this pay for trees on Majanier, the East-West Road, and Whitman. Now, because of our success with earmarks and grants, is Mr. Carlton just alluded to, Majanier is pretty well funded. And then the East-West Road, the developer is doing a lot of that. Working with our on-call engineer, one thing that surprised me is given the fact that West Whitman wasn't in the city, now it is because of the Martin Airfield, doing the engineering and running an irrigation system that far is actually a lot of the money. So that is going to eat a lot of it. And then also through the discussions, as we're getting on these trees, one of the areas we're under-resourced in is like people to take care of the city trees. So since we were renegotiating the grant agreement and they said you could put it in any line item you wanted, I posed the question about, hey, for 2 years, how about put that money into covering the salary of like a parks worker too, to cover taking care of the trees, and they were okay with that. So this has been reworked. So the majority of this money is going to run, do the engineering, run the irrigation system, put all the trees down Whitman, and then also have that staffer for 2 years. Because really, as the city is growing, I mean, we were needing to do that anyway. This just gets us a little bit ahead of the game a bit. So that's the plan, but they were agreeable to it. So that's what's before you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cleveland,
No questions?
Councilmember Espinosa.
Do you have any idea of how many more trees we're planning to plant, Mike, as a result of this award?
Yeah, yeah, so I mean, based on the estimate just for like the West Whitman Drive, it was around 159 trees, and then Majan, I had a similar number to that, so about north of 300 trees. So when you add all that together, yeah, we need like someone to maintain that after they get put in, so.
We subcontracted to a company, a tree care company, to cut some of the branches currently, or do we have employees do that? Because I've seen some company cutting a lot of trees around town, and it's not city workers.
I'm not sure what you're seeing around town. It could be a contractor for Pacific Power. That's pretty
Utilities.
common. We have contracted to a few of local tree removal companies to remove problematic trees. So when it comes to removing large trees in the right of way or that are impacting the right of way, it's not uncommon that the city would contract that work out. For general maintenance to trees, trimming branches and things like that, it's typically handled in-house.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Certainly.
Councilmember Peterson?
The question, it's gonna be beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah,
Do you think about it? Years down the road,
yep.
future generations.
Councilmember Williams?
No questions, but I'm really excited about this.
Councilmember Sherman?
No question.
Councilmember Boyle?
No questions. I'm excited to have all the extra trees. It'll be pretty.
All right, so any further questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion for this resolution?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 24-048, which accepts subcontract award of the U.S. Forest Service Inflation Reduction Act tree planting grant through River Network for $730,413.05.
Second.
Great, thank you. We have a first and a second. Any other questions or comments? All right, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Go get some trees. All right, let's see next. Mr. Rickard's gonna present on the Consolidated Permit Review Grant Program.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have been awarded a grant from the Department of Commerce for $170,500 for the Consolidated Residential Building Permit Review Grant Program. It's a 1-year grant. We'll use those funds to fill a senior planner position. So that will aid in review of building permit applications, subdivisions, short plats, site plan reviews for commercial development, and also help manage our on-call planning contracts. So looking forward to this. It's funded for 1 year with the understanding that there will be another grant application next year to fund the second year. So this is an exciting opportunity for the city, and we're asking for authorization to allow the city administrator to execute that grant agreement.
All right, I'm gonna throw everyone for a loop and go the other direction. Councilmember Boyle.
I thought we talked about discussing it first. I don't have any questions, but I think that it's great. I'm glad we're getting this forward.
Councilmember Sherman. I'm used to them taking the questions. I don't have to think of questions.
Surprise. John, this sounds great. Good job, whoever, probably Mike wrote for it or John provided all the information.
You wrote the whole thing?
Yeah, whole thing.
John,
Congratulations.
thanks for doing good. Maybe you can help, Mike. All right, no question.
Councilmember Williams.
So you said this is going to cover a planner. Is it also, are we to expect that we'll see some changes to our process?
There will be some improvements made. We already don't let Commerce know this, but we are already in compliance with the timelines on issuing our residential building permits. But So mainly our improvements are going to be made on the processing of our commercial and residential like subdivision applications, and also assisting with, because we don't have an in-house engineer, there's a lot of coordination with JUB on those engineering reviews. Once it actually technically leaves the planning world and goes into the engineering world, the planning department is still the liaison basically between the applicant and our contract engineer. So-
Okay, so we're not gonna be like, changing our application requirements and things. This is just improving the process by having staff to actually do the process.
Correct, yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
I imagine it would also alleviate some of the workload off of some of the current employees by having an additional one.
I think it's going to help a lot, yes.
Okay,
Morale will be lifted.
excellent. Excellent. Councilmember Peterson,
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Espinosa.
I'd just like to note and say thank you to all the guys, John, Robert, Mike, Brian. You all work hard for the community and for our city. And these types of things just show, that we're making things easier for developers and new growth. And so just thank you so much. Things like this just make me proud to be part of this community.
Good them blush. Councilmember Cleveland, no questions or comments? John, I have a quick question. How do you have any concerns that it might be difficult to find a planner with only a 1-year guaranteed funding?
Well, I would hope that, because the understanding is because we've received this grant, it's basically we're being it as seed money to fund a full-time position going forward. So I'm relying on Mike and Brian and the rest of the council to make that happen in the coming years.
And to be frank, from a couple of years ago, some of you may remember, some of you might not, but we did a prioritization matrix as far as when we hit to certain positions, we'd fill it. This was like the next one up after all of that. And one of the issues where we do have hangups is like in the subdivision and planning approval, because at least with the building division, we have like a building inspector and a building official. With planning, it's John and just John. So yeah, that's a lot.
Well, and I feel like a number of years ago, there was a time when you had someone working a lot of overtime. And at that point you were like, I'm not ready to hire someone because we don't know if this is going to be sustained. If the busyness or someone on your team was working so much. And so I remember that conversation. So it's nice now that you're like, no, we really, this will be sustained.
And that was in our building division. Scott Hall didn't have any support.
Right.
And so it was my priority as a department head to make sure that the people that are out there on the street every day and handling a lot of work had sufficient support.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is awesome.
Thank you. Thanks.
So really, we're just getting help for about a year or two for a position we were going to fill anyways.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move to authorize the city administrator to accept and enter into contract with Washington State Department of Commerce for the Consolidated Permit Review Grant in the amount of $178,500.
I'll second.
Wonderful. We have a first and a second. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thank you for that work. Let's see, next, wastewater treatment plant phase 1, and Mr. McAndrews is gonna present on that.
Thank you, Mayor. So you may remember very recently, we brought this to you for award to Goodman and Mellenbacher Inc., Game Inc. We bid the wastewater treatment plant phase 1 project. Game Inc. was the apparent low bidder. We awarded it after taking it to council. we pushed the signed contract through, they returned it and promptly reached out to us after recognizing that one of their suppliers had grossly misquoted them on an important component to the tune of, I think, $538,000. And so we carried on discussions with them about this for a little bit. Our city attorney got involved with some research and trying to sort out exactly what we could do. Included here is an email from HD Fowler, who was the one that misquoted the part. And an email or a letter from Goodwin and Mellenbacher Game Inc. asking to have their contract be voided and without forfeiture of their bid bond, or to reject all bids. So the city attorney did her due diligence, and what we ultimately were able to do was reach out to Apollo Inc. as the second bidder, and they confirmed that they will stand by their bid and that their bid prices are good. And so at this point, we were recommending that we go ahead and approve Game Inc.'s request to release them of their contract and to award the project to Apollo Inc. So the cost of this is about just under $360,000 more Apollo's bid than what Game Inc.'s bid was. But if Game had actually had the correct prices on that part, they would have been another $500,000 presumably anyway. So the city feels that if we were to reject all bids and rebid it, it would likely cost us more. So I guess similarly to pre-4 with Apollo, we'd be looking for a 3% contingency, which was $165,974.40. So I guess I'll open up to any questions. If anybody has questions about this.
Councilmember Cleveland.
When we review bids, is there someone that kind of goes through them to ensure that they're pretty sound? Is this just something that slipped under the radar, or?
Yes, we do look at the bids and all the line items to see. And one thing that was noted was a difference in the costs on a few line items, which isn't uncommon. And so one contractor will say, I can do this for, $50 a unit, and another contractor will say $70 a unit. And so it was noted that Apollo and Game had different costs, but it didn't seem concerning to our consultant engineers or the city when we reviewed it. And Game didn't even have concerns until then. They reached back out to HD Fowler to place a purchase order, and they said, well, wait a minute, we can't stand by this quote. And so as soon as they recognized it, they immediately came to the city and tried to work through it with us. So I certainly appreciate that, as opposed to moving on with the project and trying to sort it out with a change order or something later on. So I think it was, on their part at least, an honest mistake in trying to do what's right.
What was the item in question that went from who knows what to up $500,000?
What I believe happened is there's a model of this air piping coupling that is stainless versus a model that is not. And I think what happened is HD Fowler accidentally quoted them for the price of the non-stainless one instead of the stainless. If I understand through all the back and forths and everything that ultimately transpired, that is what I believe ultimately happened. Is HD Fowler essentially gave them a quote when they were putting their bid together for the wrong part. And so, or the price of the wrong part. And so that's ultimately how we got to where we are.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Espinosa.
No questions.
Councilmember Peterson.
So Apollo was how much less than Game approximately?
Apollo was more than Game.
I'm sorry. Yeah. More, how much?
I think my math,
It's just a rough number, yeah,
360,000,
about 360.
359.40.
Okay,
And so,
and
and
with contingency, yeah, so you're looking, yeah,
so, yeah, after contingency,
you're at five, yeah,
yeah.
so.
So it's an additional cost to us. We have the funding through our ecology grants. But it certainly is more money, but like I think I touched on,
10%.
we're fairly confident if we went out and rebid this,
Right.
that prices would be higher.
Yeah.
So.
Councilmember Williams,
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Sherman,
Have you ever had to do, I mean, not like a error like this before, but like you award the bid, start move on, and then you call the guy that didn't get the bid and say, oh, hey,
I have
are you still
not,
interested?
and we had to look into the legality of it to make sure that we could.
Yeah.
And once we released, if I understand it, I wish Ms. Colwell was here to speak to this. If I understand it, once we release Game Inc. and allow them to withdraw their bid essentially, then we now only have one responsive bidder. So we're allowed to move on to that bidder. It might be different if there were multiple bidders.
Right. And it just so happened in our favor that Apollo was still available
Correct.
to accept it. Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Councilmember Boyle,
When we get these kinds of situations, do we then moving forward, like on a completely different project or things like that, when we're getting bids from people, do we kind of keep in our back pocket who's made these kinds of errors and proceed with caution later?
I'm sure we'll pay extra attention and look at line items. The reality is legally, if Game Inc. is the apparent low bidder on another project, we have to give it to them. I don't know the processes. There are processes that we could go through to, I don't know what the term is or the terminology. Yeah, to debar them. And I think that's for a temporary 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that this really warrants that.
Right, but there's not like anything down the road that we can do to safeguard that if we accepted another bid, this couldn't potentially happen again. No.
Not-
Okay.
Not really much. I mean, we have that debarment code, but you have to show that there was willful intent, which.
Right, and I don't,
Yeah,
it doesn't,
and-
I don't think that this was
Yeah,
malicious
no,
or intentional, clearly, but.
I mean, one thing we do because of a incident that occurred a couple of years ago, though, is when we do open the bids, I actually put that on YouTube. Yeah.
Other streets.
But there is video of that because of an incident from some years ago, so.
Yeah, we open envelopes publicly so anybody can sit and be present for the bid opening, and we try to record that if possible.
all right, I have a few not hard questions, but they might not be nice questions. I kind of feel like we're making an amendment, changes on something that really isn't our problem. Being that that's what Game gave us. Wouldn't the problem be between Game and Fowler? Is that the name of the?
Sure. No, I understand what you're saying. The city, again, I wish Ms. Colwell was here. The city could say no and hold Game to their bid. And what would likely happen is Game would refuse anyway. And then they would lose their bid bond. So we would have to collect on their bid bond.
Which is how much?
Around 200, I think it's 200, I think it's 5%. So it's like 250,000-ish. And it's my understanding that is a difficult process to collect from the bonding agencies. There's a long drawn out kind of battle.
Then that sounds pointless to have that bond then.
I mean, the thing is, you have to show it's malicious, because I was talking with City Attorney Caldwell about it, because if there was any way we could keep that bond money to illustrate the point, I was like all about that. But unfortunately, because there's a lack of malicious intent here, you then get into a tug of war match that just goes on and sadly.
I was led to believe that it would likely turn into a legal battle between us and the bonding agency. And we would still not have the project happening. We would have to rebid it ultimately. At that point, Game would be ineligible from being able to rebid on that project, that particular project. But
Okay, so we couldn't just deny it and say we're gonna give it to Apollo if you're not gonna follow through and take our bond percentage? No.
no, I mean,
Okay.
that's essentially what we're doing is denying it, giving it to Apollo, but we are releasing their bond.
Right. Right, I just want to understand what, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, I have Councilmember Williams and then Councilmember Boyle. Oh, you're
I just-
appointing Williams. Okay, Councilmember Williams?
I just wanted to comment that in the long run, being willing to let them out of their contract when they made a mistake. I mean, we all make mistakes sometimes. And if we insisted that they stick to their bid and they decided to go ahead and do it, it would be very grudgingly. They would be trying to do change orders all the time to get a little more money out of us. And with as few contractors as we have that are willing to work with us, having them understand that we will work with them, I think is really good in the long term. And we're kind of splitting the baby here because we're not rebidding it, which is what they would like to see, but we're not taking their money, their bid bond, which is kind of what we would like to see, if that makes sense. So this does happen, and I've seen it go both ways where, nope, you have to stick to your bid. And in the long term, I don't think that works out very well.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, then do we have a motion?
Councilmember Williams, I will move to approve accepting Game Inc.'s request to void its obligations to the city, to release Game's bid bond, and to award the wastewater treatment plant Phase 1 upgrades to Apollo in the amount of $5,432,480, and authorize the Public Works Director or his designee to sign the project contract documents and to approve additional work up to a total of $5,698,454.40, which includes a 3% contingency of $165,974.40.
Second.
Great, we have a first and a second. Before I call for a vote, I have a quick question. Apollo Inc., did we get satisfaction on the issue we had on the College Avenue problem that the work that they did?
Yes, we did. Apollo historically, from my perspective, has been good to work with, and they have lots of experience in this type of project. They've done a very similar project, I think recently at the City of Pasco, a lot of the same piping and vaults and things, so.
Excellent, great. All right, questions or comments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. You can share the good news then. Last item is a salary ordinance update. Oh, no wonder Ms. Doreen's here. I thought you just wanted to watch the whole thing. And Mr. Rickard. At least you're listed, so maybe. Doreen?
Sean, she stepped up to the podium, so I think we let her.
The whole time.
Yeah.
May as well, right?
Right?
Make sure you press the button.
This is just a follow-up to Mr. Rickard's grant that y'all just approved. We need to get that senior planner position added to the salary ordinance so we can move forward with advertising and getting somebody hired. We looked at lots of different comparable cities, and then also our neighboring cities, just to make sure that we're kind of in line. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but it's pretty straightforward. That's the only change, is just the addition of the senior planner.
All right. Councilmember Cleveland, no questions. Councilmember Espinosa, none. Councilmember Peterson,
No questions.
Councilmember Williams,
No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Sherman,
No questions.
Councilmember Boyle.
No questions.
All right. So if we have, let me take a quick look. No questions or comments. Do we have a motion? Is this a resolution? I'm sorry. On this ordinance.
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 24-008, an ordinance adopting salaries and compensation for the mayor, city council, appointed officers, and employees of the city of College Place, and establishing an effective date of July 1, 2024.
I'll second.
Great. We have a first and a second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Thank you, and thank you for hanging around with us this evening. All right, there's one administrative report on the agenda tonight, and Mr. Zatello is going to present on the potential water systems consolidation studies with State Department of Health
No,
Planning
yeah. So,
Program.
so yeah, so no, I'm not gonna take that long. I'm just gonna try to make sure, get input from y'all if you have issue with this. So, before I went over to Association of Washington Cities in a week, 2 agencies, approached me basically with the white flag, if you will, being like, help. And the first one, is actually a homeowners association within the city, Villages of Garrison Creek. The weird thing with Villages of Garrison Creek, it's like what occurred like with Autumn Meadows, except like extra, because everything in Villages past the initial circle off of Myra Road is actually private, even including the water mains in there and stuff. Now the request is purely dealing with the water because they have like a number of breaks in there, and they aren't really water operators, and they are linked to our system, and they continue to chase this thing and aren't really sure what they're doing, to be candid. So they've asked a request for assistance. State Department of Health, they're actually flush with cash, where they'll pay for the consolidation plans, and then also if they agree to be folded in, they'll pay for a good majority of the upgrades. Naturally, getting all agreements is work on my part, so I'm trying to make sure the general council's good with this. Now that's item 1. I included a map of the Villages of Garrison Creek, because keep in mind some of the earlier phases, like how we have our water system through most of town, is you have water meters on each house. There's older phases in there where it's like multiple houses on a meter. So unwinding this thing's going to be interesting, to say the least, which is why you need the plan, because it's going to need one. Then the other one is Irrigation District 14. So our previous public works director paid us a visit, and if you click on the map for Irrigation District 14, so back in the olden days, they provided irrigation for the farms, and as stuff was developed, they also provided drinking water. And over years, Paul was also operating for them, and over time, we charged them if they needed stuff fixed. But you can see a good portion of the city is in 14. There is a good portion outside of it, and they've communicated that operators are hard come by. Paul's apparently retiring from that district too, and they just can't find employing anyone, like, period. So they were inquiring about doing a consolidation study too. So if council's amenable, I will file the appropriate stuff with Department of Health so we can at least see what all of this is. I did inform them, I've informed both agencies just from a general operating procedures predicament that if we are entertaining this, if the study says we have to add 5 or 6 water people and like a deputy director or some, that's how a cookie crumbles. Cause I mean, this is like this is all conjecture because we don't really know what a lot of this stuff is because it's not our system, but we will if we do these studies. So I did communicate regardless, the cost of business is the cost of business. So I just want to get this in front of you because if you're amenable to me trying to get the plan and grant money, I'll go after that. But before I do all that, I just wanted to read the temperature of the room.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Sorry, I'm just moving real quick. Any questions for Mr. Rizzatello, Councilmember Cleveland?
Yeah, a couple questions. For the villages of Garrison Creek, you're mentioning that they're interested in us adopting their water system essentially, but not their sewer. Are they gonna, or did I mishear you?
So the only thing they have filed this letter with is pertaining to water system. I'm sure in their perfect, in the perfect world, yeah.
I believe the sewer, I'm hesitant to misspeak, but I believe the sewer in there is already owned by the city.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So the city maintains the sewer. What's going on with the water system is they have a couple different of their phases that are, so they have one phase or a handful of phases that are on one water meter. So everything behind that water meter to, I think, 151 homes is private. So they have a whole bunch of private water infrastructure going through and feeding their homes, and they don't have meters at each home. And there's leaks in that system, and it's just, I mean, losing water fairly rapidly in there. They have another phase, if I understand correctly, where they have 19 homes on one meter. And then some of their newer phases are all homes metered individually like you would normally do. And so all of that to say, I think the sewer is already owned and maintained by the city. The water is up to that meter or those meters. And then in certain areas of Garrison Villages where the homes are individually metered, they have city water mains. So it's pretty complex.
They still own all the streets over there, is that correct?
Correct.
So how does that complicate, like if we did adopt their sewer system and they did need work, I mean, does it add any additional cost if they own the roads, or does it not really matter?
There would have to be easements for utility maintenance. Similarly to there's easements through, Walmart's parking lot and things like that, where if there's a water main break, the city has the right to go and make the repairs and do maintenance on it. So.
Okay. The other question I had was looking at the map of Water District 14. It looks like they also serve folks outside of College Place. If we adopted them, would we be serving folks outside of College Place, or how would we?
We would be. And again, the finance structure of all that would be suggested in that plan. I mean, part of that is doing the financing and figuring out how to charge stuff appropriately.
Most of that area is outside of our urban growth area. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's stuff outside to the northwest is outside the UGA. Yep.
Would we be able to amend that if we're providing water to folks, or is it likely to say no?
I mean, it really it's really going to depend upon us we're working with the county on the planning policy. So that and the buildable land inventory is going to determine our leeway. I would say if we have the room, it would make it an easier argument if technically there's already pipes and stuff we're running. So, and the other thing is we're technically going that way anyhow, since we have Martin Airfield. So
I can chime in. It's while it sounds odd to serve water to residences outside of city limits and outside of the urban growth area, it's not all that uncommon. I can think of several cities that have municipal water supplies that service surrounding areas and their respective counties as well. And so, I mean, I couldn't give you a percentage or a number of them, but it's not an uncommon thing. The water district, if you will, in this case, it'd be municipal water, city water, would just be servicing additional residences.
Weren't we already serving the labor camp with our water? Is that, or am I? Sewer. Oh,
Yeah, we're taking their sewer.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay, yeah. So it's, again, even within us, we already are doing similar things. Okay, thank you.
I would add that before we like jump to conclusions that this might become part of our urban growth area, we would also want to make sure we can serve the area with sewer. And that is a whole nother challenge in and of itself. And so there's a lot of factors that'll play in before we make any decision to bring that into an urban growth area.
Councilmember Espinosa.
A question about Garrison Creek Heights, the villages of Garrison Creek. The new homes that are being built on that phase, are they having individual water meters? Or are they all gonna be part of one?
Yeah, the new phase that is under construction currently will all be metered individually.
Okay, so are they also part of the HOA or are they a separate entity?
I'll defer to John.
They're a separate entity. They're part of the master PUD, the approval process. They are their own phase. And actually they call themselves villages within the villages of Garrison Creek, and they are each their own little HOA. And they have a master association. So and that's just how each phase is developed.
Gotcha. So the improvement of one will not affect the other. They will be independent with their own bylaws, their own infrastructure, and they will not be.
They are independent of each other, their own bylaws. They will have, there are certain areas that they have to come to agreement on in terms of maintenance of common open spaces and shared, access, like Garrison Village Way is a kind of an artery through the neighborhood. And typically there's common, maintenance obligations that they need to work out within each phase.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Peterson.
So that for the District 14, Mike, are we ever is the city ever obligated to assist? And I guess what I'm asking, if these areas where their infrastructure is crumbling, so they're on a septic system, most of those?
I mean, some, some, I mean, it's the irrigation. So as far as the water, from what I'm aware of with Irrigation 14, they just built like a new well and they have like decent water lines. So they actually, from what I'm aware of, don't have bad stuff. It's just finding operators and people.
Yeah, I guess I'm out. Yeah, and you're talking about a finance structure, a cost.
Yeah, finance structure cost. Yeah,
it's interesting how. I guess if I go back to my question, is we're not under obligation in the future. If there was something that was next to the city that was collapsing their infrastructure, does the state look to us to? I mean,
I will say, because this came up at Association of Washington Cities, they are running a bill actually about that, because there's so many of these districts that aren't able to like properly run, where if this bill did pass, they would actually be able to order them receivership of like a neighboring jurisdiction and give them a bucket of money and be like, go, pretty much. So that isn't right now, no, but there's legislation moving where that's going to turn into, it sounds like.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Councilmember Williams.
You're still on mute. You're still on mute, Council.
You're still on mute. Councilmember Williams.
Sorry, I was doing so well tonight. I think all the questions that we put together here really show how badly we need the study. I do think it also, this is a good demonstration of why these kinds of districts are not a great idea. And so I'm in favor, if we can work it out, to bring these under the city's umbrella.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Sherman.
For the villages of Garrison Creek, if, and I understand we're just talking
Yeah.
about a study and this is
Yeah.
very early on, but would this, when you go in and try to make some of the metering issues, is that when would their issues of water pressure be addressed at that time? And there was like some leaks where some residents were saying, hey, we don't even have water for toilets. But like, how do you find, oh, this was from like a year or so ago. Is all of that part of this?
What would likely have to happen, there would be some sort of an assessment to determine what kind of deficiencies there are. And those would have to be identified and the costs associated with them. And that funded somehow.
Yeah.
So depending on the grant funding and HOA contribution, improvements would have to be made to ensure that everything was up to the city's standard before the city could
Yeah.
take it over.
Right.
So it would very likely mean new water mains put in through all of those roads with new services to each home and irrigation and backflow devices and meters. Fairly significant project.
Right.
But yes, it would ultimately have to end up solving pressure issues.
Yeah.
That might mean some sort of the pressure increase. It might just fixing the pipes might just solve the issue.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Boyle.
And would this, if we take this over, would it change all of their meters where each home would individually be done and
Yes.
it would involve
If the city took it
redoing all
over,
of that,
it would
right?
require them to be metered individually.
So just a little project, just a little project. Yeah, just checking.
Okay, I have some quick comments. I have by no means opposed to helping our neighbors, especially taking care of those that are already in our city that are having the issues. I'm totally in support of that. However, I do want to just keep in the back of your mind that however the study goes.
Yeah.
I would not support, I'm not saying it's just me, if it's gonna cost the city any money of our taxpayers, or if our staff capacity is not gonna be able to handle all these additional homes and meters. So if we see that study says, it's gonna require another 2 FTEs or something in this department or that, I think that needs to be incorporated in the cost, to kind of think about. Cause this is a lot of households to be adding to our existing staff. In many ways, including our, from our finance to our public works to, just whatever it is that all handles those.
Yeah, and I would just say when I was approached, I told them that right off the cuff, because just knowing the amount of homes, it's basic math, we're gonna need more people.
Yep. And does this change in any way not so much our requirement, but how much water storage we want to have? Or with the new water tower, will we be having sufficient?
For the villages, they're already in our system. It's just private stuff, so I wouldn't really think so. For irrigation 14, it's probably gonna be what the study says. We don't know what we don't know.
Okay.
I believe District 14 has in their water system plan, if you will, the intent to at some point build a water tower for some storage. So we would want to look at that and consider that in moving forward. It would have to be part of the assessment.
Yes. Okay, so just make that, make sure that those things, those concerns are addressed in the study, because otherwise I don't think I could support anything that's going to cost us more money or put our staff in a higher stress position. To capacity what they're already in.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions or comments regarding this topic? All right. Thank you, Mike. Go forward with it.
Yeah.
And how quickly does Garrison's need to have this known? Because aren't they in a situation right now that they are already dealing with, or do they have time for this full study? And
Garrison Villages has a few things going on. They have their current leaks that they're working on finding and repairing. Another issue that's going on in Garrison Villages currently with their water system is through a leak that they tried to repair and caused another leak. It became apparent to the city that there was a higher risk to our water system because they don't have what's called an RP or reduced pressure backflow device between their system and ours. So if they had the issue that they had a month or two ago where they were digging and ultimately got dirty water into their system, if they had that at the same time that, for instance, our fire department went out to fight a fire or something that changed the pressure in our system, it could backflow and pull that into contaminate our own system. And so we've required them to install an RP or reduced pressure backflow device. And they're working diligently on that and have a plan in place. I don't remember the deadline at this point, but they are fully cooperative and working hard to make that happen. That's going to happen regardless. So I'm not sure if that's what you were asking about or
Well,
if it's.
I just wanted to make sure that our timeline, that they're not in such a state that us taking this time to do this study would be a detriment to them. I want to make sure they're
I don't
able to
believe
wait
that's
us
the
out.
case. They will have to continue to deal with, leaks in their system, and we'll have to continue to put up with that potentially. And they'll have to continue to work on finding their leaks and fixing them. It seems like more leaks pop up as soon as they fix one. So I don't think it's detrimental at this point, but it's going to be an ongoing thing that they've already been dealing with for several years.
If any of that changes, please let us know, just so that we're on top of the situation of what the residents are dealing with over there, please.
Certainly.
All right, so moving on, information reports, there's one in your packet if you have not reviewed it. No executive session tonight, so we're down to good of the order. Is there any business for good of the order? None, Lauren?
Hey.
None.
My speech was unprepared.
All right. All right, so hearing none at this time, do we have a motion to conclude?
Second.
So moved.